Today we are going to have a look at the latest microphone from Synco, which is the Synco G2. So I thought maybe we can start this video by coming out here and do a bit of outdoor filming so that we can all listen to the audio quality when we are using this microphone to do some filming outdoor. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. I am an ambassador for Synco microphone, so I'm not going to call this one a review. Instead, it's a video for me to share with you some of my thoughts, my experience, and also some of the facts about this microphone after I've been using it for a little while. This Synco G2 is very similar to the Synco G1 that was released last year. The size is virtually the same and it's also very lightweight. But there are quite a few changes and upgrades compared to the G1. I guess the most obvious one is that now it has a color display on both the transmitter and the receiver, which is I think it's the biggest complaint I had with the G1 when I was testing it last year, because the usability, some of the settings when you're changing is not very clear what you are changing. So now with the display, it should improve the usability a lot. Synco also told me the audio quality of the G2 is quite a bit better than the G1 because they have also spent quite a bit of time and trying to improve the audio quality of this microphone. And now I want to do a bit of range test, because according to Synco, the maximum range that the microphone can transmit is around 70 meters when there is a direct line of sight. So I want to do some tests myself to see what sort of range that I can get with this Synco G2. Okay, now I'm back to my usual spot to do some range testing. Right now I'm right in front of the camera and I'm holding the G2 so that there's a direct line of sight between the receiver and the transmitter. So I'm now starting to walk away from the camera and just see how far away I can go until I wouldn't be able to transmit the audio from the transmitter to the receiver. Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm a couple of meters away. I'm also holding a range finder on my hand so that I can check how far away I am from the receiver. All right, testing. I'm now about, let's see, about 20 meters away from the receiver. And testing. Let me keep going. So according to Synco, the G2 has a direct line of sight up to 70 meters. So let's see how far I can go away. Okay, now I'm exactly 70 meters away from the receiver. So yeah, the 70 meter line of sight seems to be okay. I'm about 110 meters away from the camera and the audio seems to be still good. I'm now about 140 meters away, so it is double the line of sight distance that is claimed by Synco, and it seems like the audio is still going alright. Actually, now I'm starting having problem seeing my camera, my assistant who is going to give me signal when the audio transmission stopped. I'm almost 180 meters away and it is still working fine. Seems like that is pretty impressive. And let me keep going. Now my distance is 210 meters away. So very far away. Now I'm starting to walk back to the camera, so because there's not much else I can go. Okay, now we are back, and I have to say I'm definitely very impressed by the working distance of this Synco G2 wireless microphone. While there were a couple of very brief cutouts when I was walking away from the camera, but basically even at 210 meter distance between the transmitter and the receiver, the audio signal was still transmitting pretty much perfectly to the receiver. So that is like 3 times the official figure that is claimed by Synco, which is 70 meters with a direct line of sight. So definitely very impressive. But one thing I have to mention though is I was doing the test in probably the best possible environment. There is a direct line of sight, which is very important when you are using microphone system like the Synco G2, because anything that's blocking between the transmitter and the receiver would hugely affect the working distance of this wireless system. So I was testing it in the outdoor area with direct line of sight, so I get 210 meters. If you are using it in another area, maybe indoor area with a lot of interference, especially if there's something that's blocking between the transmitter and the receiver, the working distance would probably be a bit lower than what I got. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about the design and the feature of this Synco G2 wireless microphone. There is 2 different versions of the G2 microphone. One is the G2A1, which is the one that I'm using right now, which is a 1 transmitter and 1 receiver. And there's also a G2A2, which is the one with 2 transmitter and 1 receiver. The price of the G2A1 is $129 US dollar, and the price of the G2A2 is $199. The transmitter and the receiver are both very compact, as you can see here. They have a almost identical design, which is something I don't really like. I really prefer if the transmitter and the receiver looks a little bit more different, but it is okay because the microphone plug at the top is a little bit different. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. So compare it with the G1. The size is virtually identical and the weight is almost identical as well. The G2 transmitter and the receiver are 39 grams each, which is only 4 grams heavier than the G1. If you look at the outside, I guess you can see the biggest difference is the G2, both the transmitter and the receiver, has a screen on it, and it is a pretty decent color display. If you have watched my Synco G1 video, you may remember one of my biggest complaints about the G1 was that it doesn't have a screen, which is something that I thought it should have, because without a screen, changing some of the settings could be a little bit tricky because you don't know what you are changing from or what you are changing to. Now, with the screen on the G2, it displays a lot of information. For example, the battery status, the volume of the audio that is transmitting, and when you are changing the output volume, you can easily see what is the volume level that you are setting to. So with the new display on the G2, it definitely makes the whole user interface a lot easier compared to the Synco G1. There are a few things though I think Synco could have done better with the display. For example, make the icons on the display a little bit bigger, because right now they are quite small, so a little bit hard to see sometimes, especially when you are a little bit away from the transmitter or the receiver. And also there is still some information that is missing. For example, the signal strength. There's no signal strength indicator on the display on both the transmitter and the receiver. So these are a couple of little things that I feel Synco could have improved to the display. But other than that, the display itself is actually very nice, and even under bright sunlight, it is still relatively easy to read. There are only a couple of buttons on both the transmitter and the receiver. On this side here, we have a power button here, which is also double as a mute button. And on the other side, we have a high pass filter at the top, and also another button at the bottom for you to manually resync the transmitter and the receiver. And on the receiver, we don't have the high pass filter button here, but instead we have the output volume button, so that you can change the output volume level by pressing this button. At the top of the receiver, we have 2 3.5mm jack. One is for you to plug in the cable to connect to your camera or the audio recorder, and the other one is the headphone jack for you to monitor the audio output from the receiver. At the top of the transmitter, there is no input jack, but instead we have the built-in mic, which is the microphone that I use to capture the audio at the intro part of this video. And Synco also supplied a little volume muff that you can attach onto the built-in mic so that if you are filming outdoor, you can use it to reduce the amount of wind noise that otherwise will be captured by the microphone. Right now, I'm using the Surprise lapel mic to capture the audio. So there's a little 3.5mm microphone input jack on the side here. That's where I plug in the lapel mic. Both the transmitter and the receiver has a built-in 500 mAh rechargeable battery, and there's also a USB-C port on the side of both the transmitter and the receiver. Synco also supplied a multi-USB-C adapter cable so that you can charge both the transmitter and the receiver at the same time using that single cable. And another nice thing is you can charge the battery while still using it. So that means if you are planning to do some long recording that is longer than 8 hours continuously, you can just plug in a USB power source externally onto the transmitter and the receiver. Then you can continue recording audio. At the back of both the transmitter and the receiver, there is a little clip, just like the Synco G1, so that you can clip your transmitter onto your shirt when you're recording, or you can slide it into any hot shoe or cold shoe mount. For example, your receiver, you probably slide it onto the hot shoe mount on your camera, so you can easily attach it to your camera. To set up the Synco G2 is pretty easy. Synco has supplied both a TRS and a TRRS connector cable with the Synco G2. So if you are using this system with a normal camera or video recorder, then you would pick the TRS connector cable. If you are connected to a smartphone that takes a TRS input, then you can use the TRS cable. But if your smartphone doesn't use TRS cable, then you have to separately buy an adapter so that you can connect the receiver to your smartphone. When you turn on the transmitter and the receiver, they should connect automatically within a couple of seconds. If for some reason they don't connect or you want to manually reconnect them, then you can just press the sync button on the side of both the transmitter and the receiver at the same time and hold it down for a couple of seconds. Then they should repair themselves automatically. If you are connecting the output of the receiver to your camera, so using your camera to record audio, because most cameras in the market, they don't have a very good audio preamp, so Synco recommend you turn the volume input on your camera, set it to like a mid-level, and then you will adjust the gain on the receiver, and then you can either check the display on your camera's volume level or plug in the headphone to your camera, and then once you start hearing or seeing the audio is clipping, reaching the maximum, then you can back down 1 or 2 level, and that will give you the best audio quality. On the transmitter on the side, there is a high pass filter button there. So if you are just recording some human talking like right now, and there is quite a bit of background noise, then you can enable this high pass filter feature, and that would help you to remove the low frequency noise in the background. The power button on both the transmitter and the receiver can also be used to mute the audio signal. So if you want to quickly mute the audio, you can press that power button quickly. But one thing you have to remember is the mute button on the transmitter and the receiver all work independently. That means you can mute from both the transmitter and the receiver, but if you want to unmute it, you make sure both the transmitter and the receiver are not muted. Now, one thing I've already mentioned before, but I want to mention again, is to minimize the amount or chance of audio dropout. Make sure your transmitter and the receiver has a direct line of sight. And what that means is, make sure there's nothing that is blocking between the transmitter and the receiver. So even if you put the transmitter, say, behind your body while the receiver is in front of you, or put it like under a desk, could sometimes cause a bit of audio dropouts. I remember when I was testing the Synco G1 last year, I felt there were 2 things that Synco could improve. The first is there were no screen display at all, so that makes the user interface and changing some of the settings could be a little bit confusing and just not super user friendly. And the second thing I found was the noise level seems to be a little bit high. So I'm very happy to say that Synco has fixed both these issues with this Synco G2. there's now a nice color display and the noise floor also seems to be a lot better. I'm also very impressed by the working range that I can get when I was doing the outdoor test. However, I think the display can still be utilized a little bit better. As I mentioned before, I think the icons could be a little bit bigger and with a little bit more information displayed there. And there's also some other competitors in the market right now has a new feature which allow you to record the audio on the transmitter directly using a micro SD card or using the built-in memory. This is something that the G2 doesn't have, so maybe in the future I would like to see that in a future single product. But no matter what, I think the single G2 is definitely a big improvement compared to the single G1, while the price is still remain at a very similar level. So if you look at this single G2 and compare to the other products in the market, I honestly think this is a very good product, very versatile, good audio quality and very attractive price point. So if you have any questions about this Synco G2 microphone or any other Synco product, just drop a comment below. Thank you very much for watching this video and I will see you in my next video.